I used to actually tell people I want to elope. I'm trying to save for a home. So, I would have loved the big wedding, but our life is just sort of like unconventional. And people seem to have such a reaction to that. It was like a visceral anger that we weren't having this fabulous, gigantic wedding.
Hey, bride, if planning your wedding hasn't exactly gone how you hoped, or if stressed is becoming the leading lady of your wedding story, you have come to the right place. I'm Amy, a life coach and your wedding wing woman. This is Hey Bride, a podcast meant to encourage, inspire, and uplift you. In each episode, myself and other guests will drop gems and fresh perspectives so that you can stress less, embrace your bridal badassery, and enjoy this. I'm recording on an unseasonably warm late October day, and I'm just going to be real. I'm not complaining whatsoever. I am here for it. And when I'm done recording, I am going for a hike with my son, and I'm going to love it. I can't wait. I really just want to enjoy as much of this weather as I can. So I'm going to take my ass outside and do what I can to feel good for as long as I can. In some kind of strange way, that's kind of what today's episode is all about. I mean, it's not at all. And then also it kind of is. Hear me out. I want to talk about what feels good for you. And that's what this Your Wedding, Your Rules series has been all about. Today, you're going to meet a recent bride, Alyssa, and she embodies that idea of doing what feels right for you. Planned their own wedding, very DIY, very short launching pad, kind of like Caitlin, which I've never talked to any brides who have done it that quick. And so it's just eye-opening to see how many brides are doing it on their own terms already. That's kind of what this episode is all about. Doing what feels good and right for you. This is going to be super casual, laid back. We're going to just let the conversation take us where it takes us. And I just want to invite you to let what you hear really soak in. And even if it doesn't apply to your life or your experience or your journey directly, I bet you it resonates in some way. And so just think about that and apply to your own life and see if there's any gems that can help you along the way. Anyway, let's get to it. Enough talking. Alyssa, I want to thank you so much for coming on to Hey Bride and being a part of the Your Wedding, Your Rules series. It's always a pleasure to talk to people that have recently gotten married. And you're extra special because you're also a day of coordinator. So you have a whole nother perspective, another layer to add to this conversation.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited. I feel like we had kind of an unconventional wedding, and I'm sure that will come up later. So I just got married in March, just a couple months ago. We were engaged only 4 months. My now husband proposed actually Halloween weekend. So we're kind of coming up on our anniversary. And because I've been in like event coordinating for so long, I already sort of had this vision about what I wanted, and we didn't really need a super long engagement. We were married the first weekend of March, and we got married in the church. We both attend a really small church in our area, and we looked at different like indoor, outdoor, whatever, but we just thought it would be like, how could we not, with our people and our the space we knew. And yeah, I could just talk about it forever.
Well, I invited you onto the show because last week I was talking to brides about their wedding vision, and the episode title was Casting Your Wedding Vision because I think there's a significant difference between having a vision for what you want and actually putting it out there.
Mhm.
And I think that we kind of do that through the actions that we take. So for me, it was like being in my imagination a lot before I actually started planning, and really knowing that I was listening to myself before I did anything. Because at first, I was talking myself out of what I wanted. If
It's
you
so
open it up.
funny that you bring up that, like, having that vision and then executing it because a lot of people were asking me, including my maid of honor, "What was your wedding aesthetic?" And, I think when you sign up on the websites like the Knot or whatever, they sort of make this mood board for you. My husband and I are very practical people, and actually even before we got married, we knew sort of in our life plan that we wanted to buy our first home. Actually, before we got engaged, we had really been talking about saving for that. And we did all of the early budgeting sort of backwards and accidental because we were on track to buy our first home, which we did. Our
Congrats.
timeline is sort of weird. We got engaged at the end of October and starting probably in June, like the previous June, to budget for our home. We got married in March, very low budget wedding, and then we closed on our first home at the end of May. So it was like back to back to back to back. So when we were initially sort of wedding planning, once he proposed and we had to start thinking about what we wanted. I used to actually tell people, "I wanna elope. I'm trying to save for a home." So, I would have loved the big wedding, but, our life is just sort of like unconventionals, and people seem to have such a reaction to that. It was like a visceral anger that we weren't having this fabulous, gigantic wedding. We have a really big church family, and they were like, no. Like, what's it gonna take to make this wedding happen?" And we were like, "Well, kind of everything, because we're not really looking to pay for a big wedding." So that's sort of how it started. Once we finally got into that wedding planning and my maid of honor was like, "What's your wedding aesthetic?" I was like, "Free, um, DIY." She was like, "Yeah, but is it like beachy or woodsy or like fairy tale?" And I was like, why don't you pick what you want and then let that be your mood board, and then I'll just stick to like mine. I want it to be fun. I want it to be, like, busy. I want people to have things to do. I don't want people waiting. I want it to be filled with the things that we love. Really, if you ask what our wedding vision was, it was it was a wedding for the people, by the people. The most important thing was to make sure that the people who loved us and supported us on our love journey were participating. So, we were very happy to elope. We were like, it's not a huge deal. We could have a reception after. We could, make it easy, low key. The people were not having that. when, when people finally rose up to the occasion to host a wedding for and with us, our vision was that it felt homey, that it
Mm,
felt, comfortable between everybody. And we didn't invite, our extended family. It was really the people who had a job at the wedding, So our actual budget was probably less than $2,000. We had 100 people, and we sat down at the very beginning of wedding planning and asked each other what was important. And he, for some reason, really all he cared about was two things: the color scheme, which was weird to me, and the food that we ate. We're big foodies. During the pandemic, we moved in together and we cooked everything together and we meal planned really well. And I think we found out that cooking is sort of our love language. Food was kind of a big deal to him. One of the things that our early relationship was sort of founded on was Mexican food. We were always either cooking it or eating it or, exploring. We would go to new cities just to go try different Mexican food. That's like my family, my heritage, and I love it. And I love trying different authentic, versions of whatever that is. We had a taco bar and it was
mm,
totally low key and it came out to maybe $13 per person ish. It was really on the low budget side of things. but it's delicious. And everybody was well fed and there were leftovers, which we actually pretty much killed off during our after party. So it was like the perfect it sobered people up really well. But everybody else that had something to offer, we sort of asked up front, would you mind? My husband's in a band and his front man also DJs. And we were like, would you mind putting a playlist together? And not only did he, mix a for real, a serious playlist, but he emceed and he was getting people out on the dance floor and he was walking around and chatting with people and sort of asking requests. And I mean, he really went above and beyond. When he asked us initially, what kind of music do you want? At the bachelorette trip, the girls put together a playlist of songs that we were all dancing to and loved, and, we spent all weekend listening and sort of planning. So, I think to go back to the initial, what's your vision and how do you execute it? The vision that we had was something that would be fun, something that would be inclusive of all the people in our life, and then something I mean, it really killed me. We've been to a couple weddings where you sit and you twiddle your fingers and you're sort of waiting for things to start. And then, cocktail hour, you have to sort of mingle with people you don't know. And, for us, like we're pretty friendly people. That's easy. But we had a lot of people who are introverted and don't love that. And so we had a lot of things to do. We're both sort of nerdy and crafty people. So we had Legos at every table. We went and bought the Lego like like not centerpieces, like succulents. And we put them at every table and we were like, please help us build our centerpieces. It was so interactive and fun. People were busy and we had board games out. We love games. So we had board games out and we're musicians. So we painted a guitar white and we had metallic Sharpies and people were passing around the guitar and we could see it, from our sweetheart table. And there was always something to do, and it was fun. We opened the bar right away, so people were able to drink, and we had candies all over, and so our vision wasn't really, I guess, an aesthetic.
It's exactly how I would describe what an I think you nailed it. Everything you just said is a wedding vision. So many times people confuse an aesthetic with their wedding vision, and you did not. I think what you want to experience, how you want to feel, how you want people to
Yeah,
feel,
yeah.
how you want it to unfold is how I would describe the wedding vision. And I would say, based on what you just shared with us, you hit a home run.
Oh,
That
thanks.
sounds it sounds so inclusive, it sounds like togetherness, definitely homey for crying out loud. You had Legos on the table and
It was
board games,
fun.
and you guys are passing around a guitar. Brilliant.
Something interactive. I mean, just because we've been to so many weddings where we felt like, oh, this is like we love to dress up. We love, that the camaraderie of a big event, but we were really excited to have something fun. We tend to host things. We tend to host Thanksgiving or game nights, and so we love that host feeling.
Mm,
But it was really important to me that we also got to enjoy our own day too. I feel
exactly.
like we did a nice job about that, keeping that balance.
So I would agree with your statement that you had the most you wedding imaginable. Uh, Kudos and congratulations. You had a quite the year. That's a lot. A lot has happened in
It's
the
so
last 12 months.
funny that, when you think your life is gonna go, we're very like 5-year people, 3-year people, whatever, we got that plan. But it's so weird when things happen and come up and you have to adapt. And that goes for wedding planning too. We got pretty lucky about our timing, I think. We got engaged at the end of October, and I didn't realize how much of a serious help it would be able to buy things on Black Friday. Right with that timing, as we're like, we're not gonna have a wedding, we're trying to buy a house. But everyone's like, no, 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 we gotta have a wedding. I was like, oh my God, okay, well, we're not paying full price for anything. I don't want anything expensive. So what can we do? What can we get what are the deals that we can utilize, and we just lucked out with that timing also. So, I mean, all of the websites that you can buy your outfits, all of the bridesmaids, and we got ties for the gentleman, and I mean, everything was almost half off for Black Friday.
I don't think you were lucky. I think everything worked out just how it was going to, and, like, you knew what you wanted and things unfolded exactly how they should in order to make it come to life how it did. So, originally, your and your now husband's thoughts on a wedding were, "Yeah, we wanna get married to each other, but also we're saving for this, so we don't wanna use our budget for this, for that." And so you planned to elope, and then you shared it with your people, and they were like, "Oh, no. Let's have a wedding." And it doesn't sound like you gave up what you wanted for what they wanted. It sounds like you're like, "Fine, we will do that because we would love to, but then, like you said in the very beginning, then you're helping us do this." So you're not sacrificing what you want, you're just expanding.
Correct. Yeah, we didn't I mean, to be fair, it wasn't our initial plan to elope. We just as we were I mean, in the very early stages, we got engaged on a Saturday evening, and then Sunday morning, we're telling everybody while we're at church and, showing off the ring, and people are like, "Oh, what are you gonna do? Our wedding is gonna be here," and we were like, "Well, we haven't even told our parents yet, so we're not sure," but honestly, like, right now, or at least up until now, our goal has been to save for our first home. We might elope, and right away, people were like, "Oh, no, no. No, 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 you cannot do that." It was interesting because we went home that afternoon, and I mean, of course, after we called our parents, to let everybody know, but after everybody knew, we had to really have that chat pretty early on, like, well, what do we wanna do? And we did wanna celebrate, like I said, I mean, we had 100 people, we have a big support system, people that wanted to be involved, so, we did wanna have some sort of celebration, but I think in my mind, it could have either waited until after we bought our home, or it could have just been like, a reception. It wasn't like we sat down and we're like, "Let's elope, let's save this money, let's
Mm.
do the most low budget thing we could find." It was more like, "Okay, well, how do we still stick to our budget of this house situation and still feel celebrated and and give the people what they want?"
It sounds like it turned out to be what everybody wanted. It sounds like a beautiful, beautiful experience overall, the whole thing. You had a 4-month engagement, which I think is funny because just a couple weeks ago, everybody heard from a bride named Caitlin, who also happened to be a DIY bride with a fairly her budget was less than 3,000, but they really didn't spend anything, and they had their wedding in less than 30 days. Uh,
Wow.
yeah, and so, I think it's just such a great reminder for people who think you need to have a year to a year and a half or 2 years to have a wedding, and you have to have a huge savings or put yourself in debt in order to do it. You are
Yeah.
evidence that that is not the case.
Depending on where you live also, we're in a very high population. We're in the Bay Area. So in California, the wedding industry is unbelievable here. We did the like bridal expos. I did all the research. I followed all the wedding people on social media. The one of I think it was maybe less than a week we had been engaged. I heard on the radio that the median price for weddings in our area in California was like 41,000. I was thinking to myself, like, we would be lucky to have that money go towards our down payment, and I would trade that, heartbeat. 41,000 to me, I mean, I grew up not very wealthy, and neither did my husband. We're both very humble people. We shop at Costco, and we meal plan, and we cook. We don't eat out. We that number to me just floored me. There's so much pressure in your area, I think too makes a big difference. But at least for us, as we're going to the expos and people are giving you the business cards and they're like special half off and it's still 30,000 for your venue. You're like, I can't do this. I can't afford to get married. So there's so much pressure when you go and you start your journey. But I think we also, another reason that we had a short engagement was because I'd been planning things for so long and actually had a lot of decor. And I already knew exactly, I don't want to say where we cut costs, but I think we knew what we could have afford to spend, like the food. Like that's something we didn't want to do. We didn't want to ask people to cook or spend so much time like beforehand trying to figure out how to feed 100 people. That was one thing we were like, we can afford to pass this off and we can cut costs, in the decor area. We can do the Legos and let people build the centerpieces, or, we can provide this or that. It's such a tricky industry because anything, I mean, you hear it all the time as a bride, anything that has the tag wedding on it is like exponentially like blown up in price, pretty unnecessarily. I got my hair done by my aunt the day of, and because I was shopping around, just to see what's out there. Oh my gosh, and they were like, "Oh, wedding styles are, 300 plus per person." And I'm thinking to myself, I don't think anybody knows my hair as well as I do. I'm pretty sure I could do it for cheaper, but it's, do do you want to spend the time doing it, or, the stress of doing it yourself? What if you mess up? What if you do that? So I can understand how some people want, to pass off certain things, but for the most part, it was easy for us to decide what's worth spending the money on, to pass off the stress, to pass off the time commitment versus what it was worth. And it's easier when you think about things with the price tag, like I could do my own hair. What does that take me? 40 minutes as opposed to $300. Like, okay, so if you think about it in terms of how much percentage your down payment is, there's no question.
That is so, so, so true. The wedding tax is real and atrocious. It's unfortunate. Uh, I don't really know what to say about it. And sometimes I will hear vendors, especially on social media, because like I'm following certain hashtags, and there's even the mindset of vendors sometimes is just confusing to me when it comes to their charges, because a bride might push back on the price of something, and I'm a firm believer you can charge whatever you want, but you
Mhm,
can't charge what you're worth, because there's no such thing. Like there's
mhm.
we decide what we're willing to pay for something, and that is what makes it worth it to us. Yeah, I don't really know where I was going with that. But I just want everybody to know, you don't have to approach your wedding like you're going to spend the average cost in your area. In my area, the average cost of a 100-person wedding is 24,000. I live in Metro Detroit, and even that is a lot. That's a lot for everybody. And I think as a society, we just get so used to paying that much, like everybody else is doing it. So it just becomes a norm. But if it's making you uncomfortable, if it's putting you in a financial hardship, it's not normal to spend that much money. Uh, if you have it, by all means, do what you want to do. Like there's no shame and no
Yeah.
shade around any of it. But don't let how much things cost be a limitation for your dream wedding, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
One of the things that I frequently see online or when I get inquiries about events is, you know, what kind of like side work should I be looking for, or what kind of side hustle can I start? Or do you think it's smart if I take out a loan? And it is so baffling to me. I understand the importance of celebrating your union and your love, but I'm such a firm believer that if you don't already have that feeling, and if the people in your life aren't contributing to that feeling, that I mean, it's a little bonkers to me that sometimes you feel like you have to pay for that feeling. That was the wedding vision. For us, it was only the people who are actively involved or supportive of us now are coming. And only the people who want to contribute or want to be involved or can somehow make this day more fun are going to be involved. I mean, that's another hard thing, your guest list is stressful also because you pay per person and, the price tag adds up so quickly, but I think our vision was strictly about that love and support and making sure we maintained it throughout the whole process, not just at the wedding or the party, but beforehand and during and after. And I think that was our, if we could pinpoint what the vision was, it was about the like mutual fun, support, love, celebration. Like that was our vision. And people lose sight of that, I think, so quickly because of the pressures of, your the bridal industry or, what people have in terms of expectations for a wedding. And so it's easy to get lost and it's easy to feel like, well, I should probably spend a little bit more just so I can have this and appease the masses. And, I want the day to be beautiful and I want the memories captured. And it gets a little overwhelming when you look at how much it can cost to have the perfect wedding, and it doesn't even really, in my opinion, it doesn't really matter. What's perfect is that, like, no stress for the bride, no stress for the groom, no stress for anybody. If things don't flow smoothly, which of course something always goes wrong,
Yeah.
but how you handle it really matters.
Yeah, that's actually a question that I have for you is as somebody who has over a decade experience as an event coordinator and over a year now of exclusive, in wedding
Weddings,
industry,
yeah.
how like what advice do you have for brides on the day of if like how can what advice do you have to help them to experience what they envisioned for the day itself if or when different stressors come up?
Oh my gosh, I cannot recommend this enough, and I feel so blessed to have had this exactly. Find your hype people, find your validators. Okay, so in any example, like no matter where you are in the process, early planning, during the wedding, when things are exploding, whatever situation you're in, you have to have someone in your mind who can validate your feelings or fix the problem or hype you up no matter what. So, early in our planning, we had a couple snafus, and that's fine because I can go to the internet and I can be like, hey, bride here, having some feelings. What does the World Wide Web think about this? Like, consult your hive mind because I guarantee at least half of the world that's looking at your question is going to be like, oh, same, had that problem too. Let me validate your feelings. And even if you get the other half too, like, you might not be right. Once you start to see it and see other people's perspectives, it's easy to be like, well, I either have to change my mind now or find a new solution, or I feel validated and I'm going to do what I want to do. So consult the people who will validate your feelings. Find someone who's like a problem solver. For me, I had a maid of honor and a man of honor. I have two best friends, and they are equally good at different things. And one of them is a problem solver, and one of them is my hype person. So it was great to be like, what are we going to do about this or that? And one of them would be like, we do whatever you want because that day is going to be awesome and you're amazing. And what do you really want to do? And let's make it happen. And the other one's like, well, logistically speaking, this will save you more money. This will save you more time. This will do this or that, whatever. So find your people who will bring peace to your
Mm,
process. That
that
is
is
the one thing I would recommend to anybody, anywhere, at any time for anything having to do with a wedding. Find
yes.
your validators.
Even outside of your wedding, have those people in your life. That is great advice.
Mhm.
I'm really I'm really glad I'm glad I asked. But before we end our conversation, I
Mhm.
have one other question. As a recent bride and somebody who's in the wedding industry and works with brides, what's your advice to them or to brides who feel like their vision is getting lost in the all the moving parts that come with planning a wedding?
This may not be for everyone, but if I could recommend it to everyone to give it a try, this would be my advice. Consult your partner about the wedding vision. I think at the beginning of wedding planning, it's really easy to get lost in the camaraderie and the dreaminess of this like perfect wedding that you want. But as things develop, of course, there will be either budget constraints or um, disappointments or, whatever it is. So I think that as long as in that process, you just stick to each other to be like, God, what a bummer. These people can't come, or this venue's not available on the date we want. You have to adapt in life anyway. At least in this process, you guys can do it together and find a new situation. And the reason I say it may not be for everybody is because I often see a lot of people that are like, "Oh, my future husband doesn't want anything to do with it. He's just giving me the checkbook and whatever." And so maybe it's not that's not a feasible thing. Like, "Oh, he doesn't really care." Like, whatever, he just wants me to figure out whatever. But I think the most important thing for me, for brides, is not to get lost in the vision, but to remember why you're doing it in the first place.
Right.
So if you can, pick your person and consult with your person because there's things that are unpredictable. You go with the flow or you don't, and have your sadness about it.
Yeah.
But pick yourself up and remember why you're doing it. For me, it was because I love my person and nothing, the venue, the date, nothing was more upsetting than the fact that maybe we couldn't get married. Like there's nothing when you put it in perspective that as you lose your vision or build your vision or whatever it is that you're trying to do, you just keep that perspective of why you're having the vision.
I think that advice is for everybody, even if their partner isn't as involved in the process, because this actually has nothing to do with the process and everything to do with the relationship and how
Hmm.
you support each other. And what a
Hmm.
fabulous opportunity to practice ahead of marriage. How you're going to navigate stress and disappointment and
Yeah.
sometimes pure chaos. Oh, thank you so much. Is there anything else that you want to leave with brides before we end, or do you feel pretty complete?
I guess maybe the only thing that we didn't chat about that might have been helpful, I think, at the beginning, like for me, is when you don't know where to start, because this is a lot of the questions that I get too. I always hear, uh, I just don't even know where to start. I don't even know where to begin. It feels very overwhelming. So at the beginning of the process, I would say there's a lot of resources out there. It's hard to sort of know, you can buy the book, How to Plan the Wedding, or, how, things all brides should know, or, where to start is like before you deep dive into things and get like crazy on your Pinterest board, consult your partner about the most important things. I sort of live my life by non-negotiables. So there's some things like non-negotiable, like I'll never budget toilet paper. Like it's got to be, the most ply, the most, I don't care how much I spend on it. But I get things from the Dollar Tree all the time. So for me, there's non-negotiables in all stages of life. So I would sit down at the beginning of the process and say, what are your non-negotiables? What is it that we're not spending more than this much? We are not compromising about this date. We're not, doing X, Y, or Z. Once you build your foundation, this is something I didn't really understand for my own wedding until after the fact, after we
Mm.
had sort of started getting excited and, doing the Pinterest board. But building your foundation about the non negotiables. We have to have a DJ, or we have to have this, or no matter what, I want the best photographer or the date, whatever. Pick your non negotiables and build the foundation. And things seem to happen so much easier when you can consult that non negotiable foundation. It was so important for us to remember like, we're trying not to spend so much money. Do we care about the day? No, not really. Do we care about the venue? No, not really. Okay, well, here's then as long as we're staying in budget, then that's all that matters. Another thing that I really cannot stress enough to brides is before you start, before you get overwhelmed, build your foundation. And that's non-negotiables on both sides. And it really helps the process.
I like that. Are you actively taking on new clients for this year or next year? And if so, is there a place where people can find you?
Both. I'm on Facebook and Instagram. I'm just starting up my business Instagram. So I'm not sure if the name is going to change, but right now it's Perfect Misfits Events. And I think that's even more telling of the kind of
I love it.
experiences we had. Yeah. We're go with the flow, silly. I like want it to be personable. And so was our wedding perfect? No, it wasn't like super fancy by any means. I mean, I felt fancy and everybody looked very beautiful in our photos. It was super low budget. Would you know that by looking at it? I don't think so. So, I mean,
Hmm.
for us, it was, it was weird. It was funky. Our music was awesome. The Legos were super fun. And we had things to do. We had filled chocolates. And it was just, things were just goofy and it was the best day ever. So I want that experience for the people that I work with too. So I thought there's not a more perfect name than Perfect Misfit, because I didn't want a brand new beautiful dress. I recycled a dress and you can make it your own and still feel like $1,000,000 and not have to spend $1,000,000.
If you live in the Bay Area and you're looking for that type of support, definitely check out the show notes because I'll link your information there.
Yay.
Alyssa, thank you so much again for your time.
Good luck to everyone, all my beautiful brides, and I just cannot express how grateful I am to have been here today.
What a nice conversation I just got to have with Alyssa. It was really fun for me to go back and think about the things that we talked about. I loved how Alyssa and her husband put their own spin on their wedding day. They originally were going to elope because their financial priority was buying a house. And when all the people that they care about started saying, "Oh, you can't, you got to have a wedding," they were like, "Okay, make it happen for us." And they did. What a wild concept. Is it anybody's job to do these things for us? Absolutely no, it's not. But when we're asked to do things different from what we plan to, and we're like, okay, great, we will. However, we're going to be leaning on you then. And they like stepped up and made it happen. And that is incredible. That is like, what? I have a similar but different experience in my own wedding. I'll save that for another episode. It wasn't like an ultimatum type of thing, which nor was this. It was just an option. It was when how I thought things were going to go and how I was going to show up and what I was going to be doing didn't work out how I thought it would or hoped because I got super sick. Everybody there like rose to the occasion to support us. And I think that there are moments like this over and over and over in our life, and we don't always notice or acknowledge them. So, anyways, I just want to like kudos to you, girl, for asking for what you want and for saying, yes, we will do things differently because, yeah, we'd like to have a wedding. It's just not our main priority. And if we're going to do this, we're doing it together. And I just love that you had the audacity. Because some people would be like, the audacity. And I'm like, yes, I love that you guys did that. The best part is that they stayed focused on other life goals, like buying their first house, because it was a very big deal. That was a priority for them. And I just can't help but say or think, like, isn't that what this series is all about? Your wedding, your rules? Yeah, it is about defining what really matters most to you and then making decisions that line up with that. So, again, thank you, Alyssa. Make sure you guys check out the show notes if you want to, if you live in the Bay Area and you're thinking about using her services. I mean, go on and do that. I think you would have a person who brings not just the experience of the industry, but the perspective of a bride. I think that would really, really be beneficial for anyone. Ah, I'm going to end this and get my butt outside and enjoy this warm October day. Until the next time, there is no one right way to have a wedding. Keep following what feels good for you, period. See you next time. Bye. That was incredible.
Woohoo! Oh my gosh, I can't
All
believe
right.
it.
We
This
did
is
it,
awesome.
Alyssa.